So we'll continue with the Coal Bowl story. Jim Kavanaugh was born to Jim and Marie Kavanaugh in New Waterford. Jim still resides on Nicholson Avenue, New Waterford, very close to his family home, just across the street from Mount Carmel School. In 1966, Jimmy married his lovely wife, Mary McIsaac. They will celebrate their 50th anniversary on July 30th. Jim and Mary have a daughter, Kim, an accomplished school administrator, presently working for the Department of Education in Halifax. Kim is married to Glenn Madison, a former New Waterford resident and a former member of the Bears basketball team. Jim and Mary also have a son, Quinn, who passed away 3 years ago. The apple of Jim and Mary's eye these days is granddaughter Kendra, who is an accomplished artist. Kendra has just graduated from high school and attended St. Max in the fall, pursuing a nursing degree. Jim was an accomplished athlete and student during his formative years at Mount Carmel. While at Mount Carmel, he was awarded the prestigious Father Nicholson Memorial Trophy, which went to the student who excelled in sports and leadership. Jim was awarded the trophy as a grade 10, a significant achievement, to say the least. He topped that off by receiving the award the following year as a grade 11. Had there been a grade 12 program at the school during those days, I'm sure he would have received it again. Jim went on to Xavier College, and like so many others, off to St. Max, where he graduated with a BEd and later a master's degree. And guess where he started teaching? Mount Carmel, of course. And then on to Brighton Education Center 5 years later as a history and geography teacher, and later a modern world problems teacher. In 1979, he was promoted to vice principal, cementing a lasting relationship with his mentor, Dr. Bryden McDonald. Now, Jim has a resume as long as this room. If I started breaking down his resume, we'd never get out of here. He is renowned for his work with the Nova Scotia Teacher Union, receiving numerous awards, including an award for outstanding contribution in finding a solution to the unfunded liability problem of the Nova Scotia Teachers Pension Plan. Now, that's pretty heady stuff. That just shows you the kind of ability that this guy has, and every teacher in the room should stand up and thank him, because we're still drawing on our pension. He was also selected as Executive of the Year by the Cape Breton Sports Hall of Fame in 2003. That same year, Jim was selected as the Canadian Principal of the Year, chosen by the Canadian Association of Principals. I don't think it gets any better than that. Jim was at the Coal Bowl table from the beginning as Bryden's right-hand man. He spent the first week of the Coal Bowl living at the school, making sure things were in order. He should have closed the odd transit. I've had the privilege of knowing Jimmy for a long time. First as Raymond's older brother, and then watching him patrol the basketball court at Mount Carmel. Of course, I'm many years younger than Jimmy. Then I really got to know him at Beck in 1979 when he became vice principal and I became basketball coach that same year. Throughout the early years of Coal Bowl, Jim was a constant support for Bryden, and Bryden often used him as a sounding board. I was present for many of those occasions. One of my favorite expressions is common sense is very uncommon. I have never met anyone with more common sense than Jimmy. His reasoning process is something to behold. I've learned so much from him. With Bryden's passing, Jim had to step up. Coal Bowl needed him as we felt a terrible void left by Bryden's passing. Jimmy led us through an emotional time. He was as steady as a rock, as we were all leaning on him. Going forward, under Jim's chairmanship, Coal Bowl faced several challenges. The first was sustainability. Like that word, Cecil? How were we going to manage the financial expectations to keep the tournament going forward? As everyone knows, the longer an event runs, the more the shine wears off, especially for sponsors. Jimmy's leadership in that aspect was exceptional. He fine-tuned the sponsorship packages and set out to keep the ones we already had on board and then recruit new sponsors. Whether it was chasing down Chris Hoskinson, president of Emera and Nova Scotia Power, by the way, if you don't know, that's the guy that's making $4 million a year these days, or Gerard Ferguson from Annual Life, Jimmy was at his best in that milieu. He secured many 5-year commitments. That was new to us. 5-year commitments. Don't chase them every year, chase them once every 5 years. And he staggered them so they wouldn't come up for renewal. They all come up at different times. Jim also did a great job of motivating the human element of the tournament. New Waterford's wonderful volunteers. Over the years, Jimmy led the Coal Bowl from an organizational perspective. He is a great planner, and his time management skills are off the chart. He was into succession plans and always had an eye towards his own retirement in 2003, wanting to make sure the organization could survive after him. He started appointing younger people to assistant directorship positions, teaming them up with directors who were a few years away from retirement. This way, the continuity of that particular portfolio was ensured. He also started adding assistant chair people and co-chair people, realizing that was a model that would serve as different principles came to back in the future. That's how he worked outstanding leaders like Jacqueline Poirier and Lorraine Shepard into the equation. I guess it worked because Coal Bowl is still going strong after 35 years. It's not an accident. I will briefly share a few comments we received about Coal Bowl over the years, and then I will sum up. This is from parent Stan and Connie Taylor from Kingston, Ontario. Our son returned home on Sunday night from a week that will be the highlight of his secondary school years. Jonathan has recounted story after story of this wonderful experience in New Waterford. The friendliness and generosity of your community has been a common thread throughout his recollections. Coach Bruce Black from Frontenac Secondary School in Kingston, Ontario said this: "Words just can't describe it. I can think of nothing to compare with the experience anywhere. It's the best treat you can give a kid, basketball-wise, hospitality-wise, and organizational-wise. There's just not anything like it. It just doesn't get any better. We were treated like kings. The people were great. The hospitality was great. It's a lot more than winning some basketball games. I'd go every year." And then Coach Bill Lang from Kelowna Secondary in Kelowna, BC. "The Coal Bowl is what Canada is all about. Canadian boys from the Atlantic and the Pacific playing a Canadian game and learning much about themselves and others culturally, socially, and athletically." And finally, on the comments, parent Doug Greger from Kavanaugh, Ontario. "You have done much to allow our youngsters to view life in another part of our country, and their impression that Nova Scotia citizens are friendly, enthusiastic, hardworking people is one that will do much to round out their growth as Canadian citizens." Well, I can't sum it up any better than that. It's because of the leadership and passion of Jim Kavanaugh and Brian McDonald that the tournament got off the ground in the first place, and is still a lasting legacy in our town. It's a privilege for me to ask Jim Kavanaugh to come forward and accept this plaque of recognition of his induction into the New Waterford and District Sports Hall of Fame in the Pillars category. Congratulations, Jim.
Thanks very much, Lowell. I just want to say what an honor and a privilege it has been to be associated with Coal Bowl for all of the 35 years. It's been such a privilege. And to have the opportunity to serve as chair for 14 years was just unbelievable. I'm so pleased to share the recognition with the late Dr. Brian McDonald. As Lowell mentioned, he certainly was a mentor of mine, and I learned a great deal from him over the years. Not only that, he was a tremendous friend of mine, and I got to work with him for 19 years at Breton Education Center. And I couldn't have had a better person, of course, to work with and to learn from. You've heard, of course, the fact that Bryden is a visionary, and Lowell, a couple of people made reference to that. He certainly was. He was a dreamer, but I don't even think Bryden could have dreamt that we'd be here 35 years later when he started Coal Bowl, and that we'd be here and it's still as strong and still as important as it was when we began. That's just unbelievable. Why is that? You've heard, of course, that over those 35 years you had thousands of students from across this country come to this town, and they lived a week with us, and it's an unbelievable week. And the readings that Lowell gave from parents and from students, we had every year we get feedback from that. And that's certainly, that's a great experience for them, it's a great experience for our players. But I think most importantly, the reason why it keeps going is that it's such a positive event for this town. The town needed that lift in 1982, and that's why the community was open to that. And over the years, it certainly has increased the pride in this community, the honor has come to this community, the prestige has come to this community. And the volunteers, we've had volunteers, the same ones year in, year out. It's because, and there's a tremendous amount of work in Coal Bowl every year, but every time you go through it, you feel so good at the end of that Coal Bowl, you have to do it the next year, and it just went on and on and on. Most importantly, I think this is the most important aspect and value that Coal Bowl brings, is that our students at Breton Education Center are very much involved in all aspects of Coal Bowl. It was grades 7 to 12, now the 6s are there, from grades 6 to 12. We try to involve as many of the students as possible to get involved in all aspects of Coal Bowl. And what it does, of course, is they have an opportunity to host, a first-class national tournament. And there's not a community in this country that can do it the way we do it here. So it builds tremendous pride in those students, tremendous self-confidence in those students. They feel very good about themselves, very good about their school, very good about the community. And that's the real value that we get from Coal Bowl. So again, I want to extend my thanks to the committee for honoring Coal Bowl, and I share that with the late Dr. Bryden McDonald, and thank you very much.